and Wisconsin On Demand.
The Bucks don't stop here. Milwaukee Bucks, green and growing, better each year. Green and growing, the Bucks don't stop here.
I love it when we have an excuse to play this music. He was our cousin sub of the day on Friday, Cousin Subs. We believe in better.
I bet he didn't mail it in. I bet he was grinding.
We talked. He had a lot of Bucks insight for us. It was awesome.
Did he
And
nail
some
the
other stuff?
Did he nail who the Bucks were going to hire?
He did not make any predictions, but I would say this. I don't want to speak for Justin, and I don't want to put him on the spot. But I left that conversation thinking they're not hiring Nick Nurse. He sounds like kind of a jerk, and I'm guessing that Giannis doesn't really want to play for him. That was the vibe I got. He never said that explicitly. So now Nick Nurse will be coaching Joel Embiid instead, and Adrian Griffin, former Bucks player, former Bucks assistant, will be coaching the Milwaukee Bucks. And joining us now from the Bucks Radio Network to break it all down, it is our Bucks buddy. It is Justin Garcia. Justin, good morning. Are you tired of us yet,
morning,
or
guys.
did the long weekend help you out getting away from us for an extra day?
No, I mean it must be the long weekend because it feels like we didn't even talk Friday. That feels like a month ago already.
If only you had had that day off like Tausch did, and he would like us all to have for Memorial Day. All right, Adrian Griffin is the guy. Spent the last 5 years as Nick Nurse's assistant, so you get Nick Nurse, sort of, but with a new guy with his own ideas. And I know you and Eric Name have both discussed the idea of the quote-unquote retread, that you know what you're going to get with them, as opposed to a first-time head coach who you don't necessarily know. What was your reaction to this hire?
All right, so I suppose just to protect myself, I should preface with this. Adrian Griffin is reportedly the hire. We're still waiting for the Bucks to make that official. But to me, so we talked about knowing what you have in a guy, as you mentioned, with Nick Nurse and some of the other veteran coaches that are out there. I like that we don't really know what we're getting in Adrian Griffin in terms of his coaching track record at this level. Now, it's always an adjustment to, as coaches will put it, to be the guy with the whistle and the guy that's calling timeout, because we haven't seen a coach in that spot react to it. I know Griffin had some experience. It was a game or two that he filled in for Nick Nurse, but that's certainly nothing that you can really pull from and say, hey, this is how he would coach. To me, though, when you look at the reaction from players he coached with the Raptors, players that he had previously coached in other stops, and the fact that this was a longtime assistant, he was a role player with the Bucks, then moved into becoming an assistant coach, coached under some very, very good NBA coaches. He was with Tom Thibodeau in Chicago. He was with Nick Nurse. This kind of reminds me a lot of Darvin Ham last year, because for the last couple of years, we would all say it's only a matter of time before Darvin Ham moves on and gets this job. And it was the same with Adrian Griffin. He was interviewing the last couple of seasons, and I think people around the Raptors and those around the league said, hey, this is one of the up-and-coming assistants. He's going to be one of the next assistants to get tabbed to be a head coach. And I go back to, we knew how much the players on the Bucks loved Darvin Ham, but at the end of the season, Bobby Portis put words to it and said, man, we really, really missed Darvin Ham, and spoke about some of the things that he brought. He connected with the players. Not to say Bud didn't, but he did. He was a former player. He seemed to be a guy that really held guys accountable, but not in a stern way. And these are all things Bobby Portis spoke to and said, hey, we missed this quite a bit. Adrian Griffin, everything you hear out of Toronto is that same guy. The players loved him. He was the guy that instilled accountability. He was a former player. And sometimes that's just easier to convey what you're trying to do when you can speak from experience.
So, JG, the question I think we all had was, how much input did Giannis have in what the Milwaukee Bucks decided to do with their head coach?
Well, I mean, I think you certainly have to consult him. It's no different from what we talked about when Bud was relieved of his duties of here's who we're leaning towards, or here's the three options. How do you mesh with them? It's not just, hey, here's the system that this coach is going to run. What do you think about that? To me, it's more about personality as well. And is this a coach that you can get behind? So I think he was certainly involved, and he should be. Now, to me, the curious thing, and to really reach out to our pal Eric Name, who's in on some of this reporting, is, we saw all three of the finalists met with ownership, met with the front office, met with Giannis at his home. But the line in there, too, that was interesting there was a dinner, and Giannis and Chris Middleton were invited to this dinner with Adrian Griffin. It's interesting to mention Chris in there because, as we all know, he is a potential free agent in this offseason. But the wording of invited was the most curious to me. So were they actually present at this dinner? And was there as much involvement as I think everybody is starting to run with of, Giannis handpicked this coach? I'm not quite so sure about that.
The report from Bleacher Report was that he vouched for Adrian Griffin. I don't know what that consists of, but if we don't know what exactly Adrian Griffin is going to bring, but we know the different stops he's been in, how long he's been an assistant, do we have at least some clue on what might be the appealing qualities that he has that would make him the Bucks coach, which is not actually official yet, as you pointed out?
Well, to me, the interesting thing is you see it a lot in the NFL, especially where you have a defensive coach and a defensive coordinator that was promoted, and you come up short. You hire an offensive coach the next go-round. So I really thought the Bucks would kind of lean on offense with this hiring as long as you have Giannis to try and unlock him even more, as Bud kind of laid the groundwork and helped him become a two-time MVP. But how do you build on that? Because, it's a change of pace, number one, but also this offense, that's been the issue in the playoffs for the last 4 seasons. Even the year they won the title, the offense was not good. It was a very elite defense that took them there. So I thought you'd lean on more of an offensive hire for this, and Adrian Griffin is not that. I think everything he's done, we've talked about this before, it's tough to say what an assistant at the NBA level really does unless you're there at practice and see what happens, which most of us are not, and we're not granted that access. So it's not as easy to point to as a football assistant where this guy's in charge of the defensive backs, or this guy calls the plays on offense. But Adrian Griffin, by all accounts, is more of a defensive guy, and that's what he's helped instill in Toronto. That's what he worked on under Tibbs, obviously, when he was in Chicago. But the other big thing that you've seen a lot of people come out and vouch for, and especially players, is he connects well with young guys, and he's done a very good job, and the Raptors have said he's been very instrumental in development of some of their young guys. I think the biggest name that has vouched for him in the past is Jimmy Butler. He worked with him when he was in Chicago on Tibbs' staff, and when Tom Thibodeau was fired, Jimmy Butler went to the front office and said Adrian Griffin needs to be hired to replace Tibbs. So that was 7 or 8 years ago that Jimmy Butler was saying this. So I think we know to some extent it's more defense with him, but he connects well with players, and he's been credited as a guy that's been very good at helping develop young guys, which when you look up and down this roster, you might not have a lot, but you have an important one in Marjan Beauchamp. So this could potentially be something that's very beneficial to a guy like him.
So that was kind of where I was going, JG. You're talking about a young coach and a roster that's aging with some free agents, with some guys with options. Does this give you any indication as far as where the Bucks front office is leaning? Is it going to go younger, or is it run it back and see if we can get this one more championship with this core group of guys?
I'm inclined to think you run it back, just if for no other reason than we have to say uncertainty with Giannis, where you have him for at least those 2 years. He can sign an extension this fall, but until he does that, you don't really know. And I think you have to approach each game, each season. We got 2 years to get this done and to make sure he sticks around and convince him to do so. To me, it's going to be really fascinating to see league-wide how teams treat this new CBA. Because if we look back in previous times that we saw massive changes coming through, the league has kind of rolled it out over a couple of years to say, hey, we're going with radical changes. You look back to the draft when they took away being able to enter from high school. They made that announcement, and they rolled it out in a couple of years. So it wasn't just, okay, here's the change. You got 2 months to prepare for this. They didn't do that with this CBA. And it's even more curious how you could get both sides to agree to this when you review it even more, because this is basically okay, we're making these radical changes, and it starts in 4 months. There are some minor things that are going to be rolled out in next offseason, some of the draft capital, freezing draft picks if you're in that second tier. That doesn't take place until next offseason, but everything else is here now. So teams like the Bucks, they're not going to have that taxpayer mid-level to use. You're not going to be able to sign guys that are bought out in February and March. So it's going to be curious to see how teams try to navigate this. And there's a handful of teams that have these same issues. The Boston Celtics, when you look at what happened last night, can you justify giving Jaylen Brown $50 million and putting yourself in the same spot we're talking about the Bucks being in for a group that hasn't, won anything? The Bucks at least have one title to show for that. So to me, I'm going to look at what teams like the Celtics do, what the Warriors do, to see if teams are saying, you know what, we're going to treat this like a credit card. We'll keep spending when the bill comes. We'll figure it out. Or are teams going to start to proactively say, we got to change how we do business? Do the Warriors say, you know what, we got to get rid of Jordan Poole's contract. We'll trade him for a draft pick to save some of that money. If that's the case, then I think you're going to see the Bucks follow suit. And you'd love to keep Chris Middleton, but you got a number in mind. It's probably the same with Brook Lopez. So to me, it's going to be how the league reacts to this is going to be very telling of what the Bucks do.
All right, JG, I got two more for you before we let you go. One, there seems to be, in the past hiring cycles of Wisconsin head coaches, a feeling of, whoa, they got it right? Matt LaFleur, the first 3 years, I know they didn't have the postseason success you want, but 13 wins in each of his first 3 years. We know the excitement around Luke Fickell. We know that Coach Bud, 5 years ago, ends up leading them to the 21 title after they hire him. Craig Counsell is entrenched in Milwaukee as the Brewers manager. How much pressure is on Adrian Griffin, given what we just talked about with a 2-year window with Giannis? How vital is it that they didn't get this hire wrong and they keep that run of seemingly good hires going in the state?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to be too hyperbolic here, but it's potentially franchise-altering if this doesn't work out.
It's pretty hyperbolic.
Because
that was the phrase I was looking for from him, actually.
I don't want to do it, but you kind of have to, just because of, as we mentioned, the contract situation with Giannis. And I think if we're being honest, you have a 2-year window. When you look at the age of this group, you look at where the contracts are lining up. And again, that's assuming you bring back most of this core. So the window with this exact group, it's closing. So you really have to maximize that. And you got to figure out how to do kind of similar to what the Warriors did. I know they've talked about their 2 timelines. That hasn't really come to fruition, but you got to figure out a way to, how can we maximize these 2 years, but also have an eye on the future and what is plan B and what do we do when we try to transition to a new core, hopefully around Giannis.
All right, last thing, the NBA Finals are set, and I watched Game 6 and Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals. Couldn't get much more exciting than that finish. It was kind of like when AFC Richmond is celebrating the tie in Season 1 of Ted Lasso, and then Jamie Tott goes down and makes the extra pass for Man City to beat them, the way that Game 6 finished. And I thought, Game 7, chance for the first team in NBA history to win after going down 3-0. And that did not happen last night. Was that as anticlimactic for you as it was for me? And how do you feel about what the matchup is that we've got for the NBA Finals?
Yeah, it was. And I was actually talking with, and I'm not the first to suggest this, but I was talking with somebody else prior to the game and said, This is all certainly very entertaining, but wouldn't it be the most Celtics move for them to come out and lay an egg and just not show up in Game 7? It's been a team that's been inconsistent all season. They're under 500 at home in the playoffs the last 2 years, which is just the most mind-blowing thing to put all your eggs into we got to get home court basket, and for the Celtics to be under 500 and lose 3 home games in this series alone is one of the bigger things that really jumps out. But also it kind of, in terms of comparisons, it reminded you of Games 5 and 6 in the Bucks series with the Celtics last year, where the Bucks steal that Game 5 the way they did in the final seconds of that game on the Drew Holiday defensive play. And then you get blown out in Game 6, or really a fourth quarter blowout, where you give up that lead and everybody thinks, hey, the Bucks have stolen this game. They're going to come home and close it out in Game 6. And it was the exact opposite. So it gave me memories of that series as well. I think the inconsistency we've seen from the Celtics, on paper they are a better team. And you can say, statistically speaking, Boston and Denver would be a better matchup. What we've seen from Miami throughout the playoffs, it's hard to say they have not been the best team. That, you can say, well, Denver's going to blow them out. And I've already seen a lot of that. I'm not so sure that Denver's the best team that the Heat have played. They went through the Celtics. They went through the Bucks. Both of those teams had better records than the Denver Nuggets. Denver's been great in this playoffs, but to me, the way Miami plays, Jimmy Butler has been, if not the best, one of the 3 best players in the playoffs so far. This is the best possible matchup. I'm not sure what it's going to do in terms of ratings, but in terms of the matchups, and if you love basketball, seeing Nikola Jokic go against an Eric Spoelstra defense, seeing Jimmy Butler go against Michael Malone, this is the best matchup to me that we could have gotten.
JG, we appreciate you, buddy. Thank you.
All right, see you guys.
That is our Bucks buddy Justin Garcia with all the insights on the Bucks' new, yet-to-be-announced hire of Adrian Griffin as their new head coach. Tausch, I'd be curious, how is this going to impact your Prize Picks work moving forward? Not only on the Bucks, but on your finals plans that you may have for the way your guy Joker may fare in the finals.
Yeah, it's not gonna change it. I think Joker's still gonna be Joker. I will look at Bam a little bit more. I really felt like obviously it was gonna be Celtics Lakers. Boy, I could not have been more wrong. But that doesn't mean I'm not gonna win big on Prize Picks. Prize Picks Daily Fantasy Sports made easy. You pick 2 to 6 players. I started out doing the 5 or 6. I liked going big, getting that big potential return. As I've continued to go, 2 and 3 is kind of where I like fit. But and you got Fridays, which I think is 3 days away. It might be 4 with the goofy week. You get that big 25 or 30x return on it. Whatever you're looking for. Today's Taco Tuesday. Taco Tuesday. 2 to 6 players. You're not going against other people. You're just going against Prize Picks' projections. So download the Prize Picks app or go to prizepicks.com. And right now, use that promo code WI, great state of Wisconsin, and you get a $100 match. You put $100 in, Prize Picks gives you another $100 to work with. You got the NHL Final 2. You got the NBA. You got LIV Golf. You got PGA. You got it all. And Prize Picks offers it all. Download that Prize Picks app and get started today.
I left off a coach on my list of great hires, it would appear, in Wisconsin sports. I'll tell you who it was, thanks to Michael, and ask that question again next. It's Wilde and Tausch.
This is Wilde and Tausch, brought to you by Grassland Butter. Grassland Dairy is Wisconsin. Learn more at grasslandbutter.com.
Hey, it's Jason Wilde for our great partners at 5 Star Painting. As we head into the Wisconsin summer, I know making decisions and finding a company you can trust to help with paint projects can be frustrating for both your home and for your business. That's why I'm here to share that the great team at 5 Star Painting should be your first choice.